Hello everyone and welcome to another Minecraft update video. This is Snapshot 23W12A, the very first for Minecraft 1.20, the Trails and Tales update. Now that might sound a little confusing because we've already seen lots of 1.20 content in the previous snapshots. Those were for Minecraft 1.19 and the 1.20 content was hidden in the experimental data packs that can be enabled here. As you can see, only bundles remains. And that's because this is the first snapshot for 1.20 and guess what, it's actually a big one. There is tons of stuff to see in this. With so much to cover, we're going to start off with an amazing quality of life change that players have probably been wondering about for such a long time. Why can't you put text on both sides of a sign? Well, now you can. If you swing around to the other side and right click it, it'll open up a text interface. But better yet, this is something you can just actually do. You can right click and bring this back up so you can change the text without having to break and replace the sign. This is a really nice quality of life change, and as you'll see, the ability to give the text different colors and then put glow ink on it is independent on both sides of the sign. So go up to a sign, right click on it, and you can immediately edit the text. And you'll see the sign update right in front of you too. So what is behind? Oh yeah, look, it's a cheeky subscribe plug. Yes, this is what I do on the channel. I cover the updates in detail so you can get all of the info on the latest snapshots. If you're subscribed, of course, you're more likely to catch those videos, so please do so. And now we'll crack back on with the video. Oh, and the point I was trying to make here is that you normally don't see the backside of a sign when it's placed onto another block, right? I think now you can see what I was trying to get at here. And there's more with these signs. If you're wondering about the hanging sign, it works with all three types of these too. And one last feature to mention is the use of honeycomb. Like on copper blocks where you can wax them, you can do this to preserve the sign and make it so that you can't edit it anymore. So if I go and right click on this, you'll see that nothing happens. And currently I don't think there is a way to remove the wax once it's been placed. And if you're using data packs and you use click commands on your signs, they will only work when the sign is now waxed. So if a player comes along and clicks on the sign with the click command, they'll actually be able to edit the text. Next up, we're looking at a feature called Vibration Resonance. Not to be confused with this new calibrated Sculk sensor that you saw in the intro. This is an ability for blocks of amethyst to interact with regular Sculk sensors. And I can show you exactly what this does with a very simple experiment. You see here, we have some amethyst blocks directly next to the Sculk blocks. They're going to chain the signal all the way down to the end where there is a redstone lamp. So when I set this one off, you can see that the signal gets chained down to the end. So the placing of this block will set off the sensor, but then when we activate it, we're going to hear a new sound. Aha, did you hear that? Now this sound changes based on the frequency, which you can think of as the signal strength that you get from a comparator. So if I place a block, you'll hear that the sound was high pitched. And if I break it, it's a slightly different pitch, and if I move around, it's a much lower one. So the frequency or signal strength that the Sculk sensor picks up translates to the sound the amethyst block makes. And it transmits a distance of 9 blocks from one Sculk sensor to the next. So with the amethyst block placed, that means you'll have a gap of 7 blocks before you place your next sensor. And if we pay attention to the particle effects, you can see them jump from the block to the next Sculk sensor. And I'm going to use a little zoom in the video editing here. Hopefully you can see the particle effects making its way down. And just in case it weren't obvious, it preserves that frequency or redstone signal strength all the way down to the end here. So if I want to light up that lamp, I'm going to need to make a big sound, and TNT blowing up will provide a large enough signal strength for it to turn on. So I guess now is a good time as ever to get to the calibrated Sculk sensor. If you stand on this thing, it sets itself off over and over again in a loop, which I'm pretty sure is just a bug. Now this block doesn't generate anywhere in the world. The way to craft it is with Sculk sensors and amethyst shards. So put 3 of them around it like this and it will create the calibrated Sculk sensor. Now this thing works like a regular Sculk sensor. Based on what vibration it picks up, it will create a different redstone signal strength. But with a redstone signal pointing into this side of the block, you'll be able to override certain frequencies like jumping. But if I walk around, that one is not overridden. So we're outputting a signal strength of 2. If I go ahead and turn this to 3, and then we jump up and down, you'll see that it picks me jumping up and down now. So the signal strength that's pointing into this side of the block acts like a filter, And this means that you can block certain vibrations from being picked up. At the moment, I am blocking me jumping. But I have found this thing to be a little bit bugged out and unreliable. Once I put a high signal strength into this one right here, it seems to just block absolutely everything. And look at that, this one here is now bugged out too. So it's a new block and it's going to have some issues on first implementation. Oh, and you can waterlog this thing to make it silent too, so it doesn't make sounds when it picks up vibrations. And speaking of vibrations and frequencies, there's actually been a big change to them in this snapshot. As you'll see here, the 15 different signal strengths have now been split up into different categories, rearranged. If you're into using this stuff for redstone, you're going to have to adjust to these new frequencies, and they might be subject to change too. This also seems to tie in with some technical stuff called game events, which again has changed if you ever interact with this stuff. The article is linked down below. And it seems the list of the 15 different types of frequencies have been listed again with their event names. So very exciting stuff, the ability to chain the Sculk sensors and also filter them for specific events. This, I think, is going to turn the Sculk sensor into the block that it could have been, because it had so much potential, and now I think we're starting to see that manifest. So what about the sniffer egg? Oh yeah, this thing right here is for hatching snifflets. And I gotta say, I think that this icon here should be changed. It just doesn't quite look Minecrafty to me. We're gonna find out how this thing hatches and watch that in action, but first of all, let's talk about the sniffer a little bit. As previously, to make a snifflet, you would have bred these together with the torch flower seeds. And now what we're going to see is that an egg is dropped. There it is right there on the ground. So instead of getting the snifflet, you get an egg. And there is another place that you can obtain an egg from. That is a warm ocean ruin. And this one is somewhere down here. Ah, yes, there it is. So to jog your memory, we have these structures, and it's inside the suspicious sand that now generates at these structures that you could find one of these eggs. I, however, have not gotten so lucky. Just a wimpy gold nugget for me. Now, for a sniffer egg to hatch, it takes a very long time, in fact, 20 minutes. However, if you plant these on top of a moss block, they will take half the amount of time, just 10 minutes. And using the F3 screen, we can see this egg currently has an age of 0. When it reaches age 1, you can see that we start to get some cracks on the egg. With age 2, it goes a little further. You also get these particle effects. And with age 2 being the final growth stage, we now just play the waiting game. And there it goes. That was actually rather quite dull. I think Mojang might have missed the opportunity here to have a more interesting hatching animation and also a growth process too. All you do is, place it down and wait, and I felt like they had previously hinted that this might be something a little more interesting. So when we've seen the sniffer before, it's had the ability to sniff out torch flower seeds, but now it's had another one added to its repertoire, and that is the pitcher pod. So if you let a sniffer do its thing, it may just sniff out this odd looking item. And once you've got one, you simply place it down on farmland to let it grow, and it has 5 growth stages. If we use bone meal, it's very generous, so this thing immediately grew to its 5th growth stage. And come on, dude, I'm trying to make a video here. And here we go, these are each of the growth stages, from 5 all the way down to number 1. When it's reached growth stage 5, you can harvest it simply by punching it, and then you will get the pitcher plant itself. And you place this block down, you'll notice that it doesn't have the blocky pod at the bottom of it. And this flower can't be placed on every type of block. However, I've been unable to find like a list inside of the game that tells you which blocks it can and can't be placed on. Now, like the torch flower seeds, it's a 1-for-1, meaning that for each plant that you get of this, you have to have a sniffer go dig you out some seeds. It can't be placed into a flower pot, but it can be composted. And something else you can do with this that you probably won't is craft it into cyan dye. So a very bold and ambitious new flower type that looks kinda alien. I've gotta say though, I really do like it. So you've seen suspicious sand, but now there is suspicious gravel, and again this can be harvested with the brush. And as we saw a moment ago, the suspicious sand has been added to these warm ocean ruins where you can find the sniffer eggs. Now the place to find the suspicious gravel is in their cold ocean counterparts. Yes, it is in these cold ocean ruins that you can find this stuff, and as you'll see here, I think that's one of the new pottery shards popping out. And so here are the loot tables for these 2 locations. The ocean ruins now having the blade pottery shard, explorer, mourner, and plenty. The warm ocean ruin having the sniffer egg, the snort, shelter, and angler pottery shards. So now I think is a good time as ever to talk about the new pottery shards. Turns out that 16 new types have been added, bringing these to a total of 20. And as you would have guessed, you can use these new shards to craft your own pots, again with these unique patterns being on the side of the pot. So I have gone ahead and placed all of these new designs onto the pots in the world so that you can have a look at them. And yes, that's the name of the shard written above on the sign with the glow ink. So now you can learn all these names and the patterns on the pots. Now there are two other places that you can get suspicious sand. One of them is the desert temple behind me, and that's where you'll find the miner pottery shard. And I've been searching for a desert well, but sadly I couldn't find one. Anyway, that's where you'll find the brewer pottery shard. Now there are 7 remaining shards: Burn, Danger, Friend, Heart, Heartbreak, Howl, and Sheaf. These can all be discovered in a new location known as the Trail Runes. And it's here on the website that it says it's a buried structure from a lost culture. And this one has a massive loot table of items that you can find from the suspicious gravel and suspicious sand. Of course, we have the pottery shards, some random colourful blocks in the form of candles, stained glass, and dyes. A bunch of other junk, including a couple of signs, and these 4 new smithing templates that we're going to have to come back to later in the video. Right now, we have to learn about these trail structures that can be found in the world. This is actually one of them right here. As I start to break the blocks, you'll notice, aha, we got some suspicious sand. And so we can get some of that loot, and it looks like I've got the smithing template. Wow, that is some good luck. As I break away more of the blocks here, you'll notice that this is quite a colourful structure with lots of terracotta blocks, and it continues to go downwards. Of course, along the way, you'll be using your brush on the suspicious sand or gravel. That time, all I got was a hanging sign. And then the blocks get even more wild and colourful as the glazed terracotta come in, and then you'll start to find blocks like mud bricks. And it keeps going on and on. I am breaking a lot of blocks. Quite a few of them are suspicious blocks too. And the cobblestone tends to signify that you've hit the bottom. Usually though, it extends in a direction. So I think it appears to be, yeah, look at this. The structure continues on this way. And I don't know how big these structures will be in the end, but that's what we're about to learn. And before we jump into a different world to do that, let's just comment on what the experience is here. You find one of these structures, you delicately remove the blocks around it looking for those suspicious blocks, and then you brush them to see what loot you get. And with the amount of junk, I think it's going to be quite tedious. Like, who's actually going to want this block? Yes, you could use it for building, but you're probably here to pick up other things. So let's now learn what makes up these structures and how big we can expect them to be. I have used an ocean world and the place command to generate one of these structures. Like we experienced a moment ago, there's this entry bit with the coloured terracotta blocks. You head further down and then it can expand into these rooms, and you have this passageway across the middle with the cobblestone on the bottom. Looks like those can extend into other rooms too. So let's go ahead and generate another one of these directly below me. Aha, pretty close to the last one that I made. And now I've gone around and just generated a whole bunch of them to give you an idea of what the average structure looks like. It generally seems to be this tower section, a path across the bottom, and then a few additional rooms attached to the side. And if this one over here looks a bit mega, it's just because I generated these ones too close together. Now inside of the game there are these 4 folders full of different structures. There's a whole bunch of buildings, decor, roads, and towers. We are now going to take a closer look at them now that we've got all the structures laid out in a flat world. These first few structures are called the group rooms. And when we have a closer look at the sand, I don't actually see any suspicious sand, but that might just be because of how these have been brought into the world using structure blocks. We then have these 3 large rooms, which are rather curious looking. Then we have 4 smaller rooms. Then the decor blocks. These I believe are just the paths across the bottom that you would have seen in each of the structure. Remember how I mentioned when you see cobblestone you tend to know you've hit the bottom. We then have the tower section with these 2 structures here which are halls, and then we have some large halls. Then a few extra ones including a stable, maybe something to do with horses, and then the towers. These I believe are what are used as the entrances. In fact, I'm pretty sure this is the one that we discovered in the jungle. And now I've had the ever so smart idea of removing the sand from all of these structures, which kind of reveals a little bit more about them. Yeah, you can clearly see like an intended structure design here. Here's what the inside of this monstrosity looks like. There's a little bit of a staircase going down. This looks like somewhat of a guard tower structure. And I'm not going to go over each and every one of these. And I guess the last ones to look at are these towers. Now I think the whole concept of this is rather interesting, but I'm not so sure about the aesthetics. These are supposed to be ruins, and they're filled up with bright and colourful blocks. Considering that they are buried in the ground, these builds just don't look decrepit enough to me, at least once you've unearthed them like we have here. And this is like the one room that has a bunch of functional blocks in. I think there's a missed opportunity here to make these rooms a little more interesting. Alright, so if you recognise this place, you've clearly been watching the Snapshot videos. I've decided to hop back into this world to talk about the new armour trims. Yes, that's right, there's 5 of them, and we've already seen 4 of them from the Trail Ruins loot table. You have a 1.786% chance of getting one of these from the Suspicious Sand or Gravel. The other one new addition is for the Ancient City, where you only have a 1.25% chance of finding this in a loot chest down there. This is the Silence smithing template, and I think it's cool that they've added this because it gives you a real incentive to explore those ancient cities and possibly encounter the Warden. Now along with this, the June smithing template has been given a new icon as well as a new armor trim. It's similar to the old one, but it's been overhauled slightly. And here's where things get a little bit confusing, because the June's old armor trim is now used by the Sentry trim. This is what June used to be, and along with this change, the Sentry smithing template has been given a new icon. So what happened to the Sentry armor trim? Well, it's now the Shaper, one of the new ones, so this is where that design has ended up. So what about the rest of them, you might be wondering? Here they are: Wayfinder, Razor, Host, and Silence. Let's not forget to check them out from the backside too. The most curious one clearly is Silence, as this trim covers the majority of the armor, whereas the other ones tend to just add a few extra pixels. So with this one you can kind of create the illusion of like emerald armor like I did in the beginning of the video. And I actually reckon this will probably be the most popular trim of all, although it's a really tough one to get. You have to go to the Ancient City, of course. What do you think? Is this one your favourite? Leave a comment down below. I suspect a lot of you will be saying yes. Now there are a few more things to mention. The Potion of Slow Falling has had its colour slightly tweaked, and the particle effect of the Wither has been adjusted too. Yeah, I can definitely see that's different to what it was like before, slightly purpley bluish. I think these particle effects here though, those have remained the same. There is also this new combination step sounds that I'm not going to get too deep into. Essentially, if you're going to walk on a setup like this, you'll hear the carpet footstep sound like normal, but the soul sand is going to be lower pitched and at a lower volume. And no surprise, there's some technical changes and nothing here that I think the average player really needs to know about. There's also this structure post processors that I don't even know what this stuff is about. And it goes on and on. There's quite a lot of technical stuff here, including some updates to how display entities work. As always, if any of this is relevant to you, you can find the article linked down below. And on that note, we've reached the end of this snapshot, so if you've enjoyed the video, please do leave a like to support the channel, subscribe, and I will see you soon with another one. Take care, bye bye.